revealed widowed Cowboy's amazing connection with unexpected child. They share incredible eyes. Jake stood in the dusty town square, the relentless Texas sun pressing down on his broad shoulders. His heart felt as parched as the wind-blown earth beneath his boots. As he scanned the sparsely populated street, memories of his late wife clawed at him, piercing through the layers of a facade he'd crafted in grief. Every day was an uphill battle, the ranch, the cattle, and most importantly, the little girl clinging to his side, Lily. Each of her innocent questions about a future beyond the dusty horizons twisted the knife deeper into his heart. How could he show her a world that no longer existed for him? The weight of his responsibilities was crushing, leaving him gasping for hope. As they strolled into the local general store, Jake's usually steady hands trembled briefly. He could almost taste the sweetness of those buried dreams he once shared with his wife, dreams of a life filled with laughter, adventure, and love. Now they lay abandoned like tumbleweeds scattered across the plains. He glanced down at Lily, her vibrant eyes dancing with youthful curiosity. But could he let her leave this life behind? Could he truly support her ambition, knowing it would sever the fragile ties to the only life she had known? Jake's heart sank with the weight of his dilemma. Just then, a voice broke through his turbulent thoughts. "Hey, you look familiar." A blond boy with wild curls stood there, his green eyes shining brightly. The likeness to Lily was uncanny. The unexpected jolt knocked the wind from Jake, sending waves of remembrance crashing over him. This boy, who introduced himself as Sam, looked so much like his late wife, it felt surreal. Jake felt a flicker of hope surge within him, mingling dangerously with a frightening tension. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As Jake watched Sam and Lily bond instantly over playful banter, a whirlwind of emotions swirled within him. Joy, trepidation, and a foreboding acknowledgement of the past crawling back to disrupt his tenuous peace. The moment felt fragile, as if the slightest misstep might shatter it. Once again, doubt crept in. Was this connection too strong? Could he allow the boys to forge a new friendship, a new possibility for themselves? Or would they merely awaken the bruised histories of their families, reanimating old rivalries buried deep in the red dirt of Texas? The air grew thick between them as old whispers clawed their way back into Jake's consciousness. Would welcoming this boy into their lives isolate Lily and him from their community? The stakes were high, and he could almost feel the world tilting beneath him, a precarious edge into uncertainty that made his heart race and muscles tighten. Just as quickly as he began to visualize a brighter future, a dark, foreboding anxiety threatened to draw him back into despair. He could sense the twin forces of hope and dread battling within him, leaving him frozen on the edge of a choice he felt too burdened to make. As Jake watched the sun set, the shadows grew long, wrapping around him like an unwelcome embrace. A daunting question lingered. Could he foster both children's dreams while confronting the ghosts of his past? The fragile tranquility of his world felt as if it were unraveling, and just when he thought he might grasp the threads, an unexpected truth loomed on the horizon, one that threatened everything he held dear. He felt the ground beneath him shifting. Would this connection be the key to his redemption, or the catalyst for another heartbreak? The evening sunlight cast a golden glow over the landscape as Jake trudged back to the ranch, Lily's laughter echoing in his ears. The image of Sam, with his wild curls and vibrant eyes, flipped the switch on a fading light within him. It had been years since he felt even the faintest spark of joy, but in that moment, the thin veneer of numbness was challenged. Yet doubt gnawed at him, creeping in like a persistent weed, threatening the fragile blossoms of hope. Lily tugged at his hand, pulling him from his thoughts. "Daddy, can we see Sam again?" Her innocent enthusiasm was like a gentle push, nudging Jake toward a choice that felt monumental. "We'll see," he replied, his throat thickening. How could he guard Lily's dreams without retouching the scars of his own? Did he dare embrace this unexpected connection? As they entered their home, the familiar scent of hay and leather welcomed them, yet the warmth fell away beneath the weight of dread. In his mind, Jake replayed the moments with Sam, the playful banter, the uncanny resemblance, the flicker of something long buried within him. This boy held a mirror to his past, a past rich in love but marred by loss. Each memory was a reminder of what he was unwilling to relinquish and what he feared most. That night, as he tucked Lily into bed, he glimpsed her dreamy smile, a reflection of the carefree spirit he once knew, a spirit he now felt compelled to protect. He lingered by her door, listening to her soft breaths, and a realization washed over him. It wasn't just about her future, it was also about finding a way to reclaim his own. Would welcoming Sam lead to enrichment, or fuel an inner turmoil he thought he had buried with his late wife? In the quiet solitude of his room, Jake stared at the dusty photographs of his wife. Each one seemed to mock his stasis, reminding him how far he had drifted from the man she loved. Was it too late to reconsider what he wanted for himself? The spark of hope ignited by Sam's appearance also carried a heavy weight, a looming danger of reopening old wounds. The next day, at the local diner, Jake ordered a coffee. His fingers drummed nervously on the table as the other patrons gathered around their respective discussions. He sharply noticed the glances thrown his way, whispers carried on the back of his mind. The past is an inescapable shadow in this town, and he was very much a part of it. Confrontation lingered in the air, and Jake felt the world closing in. "Jake," a heavy voice called out, pulling him from the edge of anxiety. It was Bill, a longtime friend turned wary acquaintance, a reflection of the tense dynamics within their community. The remnants of a shared history filled the space between them. "We need to talk about you and that boy," he said slowly. His words cut deep, stirring a fresh wave of uncertainty. Would this reaching out resurrect the enmity rooted in old rivalries, or was it an opportunity to forge a new path? Jake felt every inch of his resolve shifting as he met Bill's steady gaze. The moment had come, a point of no return. He either confronted these tides or allowed them to swallow him whole. Yet beneath the weight of decision was an underlying truth. This was not just about him, it was about Lily. Just then, curiosity flared within him. What role could Sam play in this unfolding story? In welcoming this connection, would he finally allow himself to heal, or would he inadvertently set off a chain of events that would end in devastation? With a shaky breath, Jake's mind raced. He could either retreat into the familiar shadows of his grief or step boldly into the unknown. The implications of that decision widened before him like a vast and treacherous canyon, compelling him to take a stand one way or another. The choice loomed large, and in a world spinning with uncertainty, Jake understood a revelation was coming. A moment of revelation was at hand, and it would either ground him or propel him into unfamiliar territory. The gravity of the truth was undeniable. He knew he had to confront not only the past, but the possibility of forging a different future. And in that knowledge, he grasped the faintest glimmer of hope. Would this thread of connection become his lifeline, or usher in an inevitable storm?
Bill's gaze held steady, and with it the tension cut through the clatter of silverware and soft chatter surrounding them. Jake's heart pounding in tandem with the conflict brewing inside him. Was this an intervention, a threat, or perhaps a lifeline tossed into the tumultuous waters of his life? "Sam's a good kid, Jake," Bill continued, lowering his voice as if afraid of being overheard. "But you know people won't react kindly. Have you thought this through?" Thought it through.
The phrase echoed in Jake's mind, stirring a multitude of feelings: fear, uncertainty, and an undercurrent of burgeoning confidence. He had thought about it, continually. Sam embodied pain and joy intertwined, a stark reminder of the life he once lived and the possibility of what could be. Still, what does one do when faced with a choice that divided loyalty, grief, and desire? "I'm not trying to cause trouble," Jake finally responded, his voice firmer than he'd anticipated. "Lily wants to see him." The words hung in the air, weighted with an undeniable truth. His inclination to preserve Lily's happiness battled against the remnants of his grief, a duality he had to manage. "Of course, but think about your own past, how it still affects you," Bill pressed, his frown deepening. "Opening up old wounds for the sake of a boy you barely know, it might be a gamble neither of you can afford to lose." Jake felt his defenses rise, insisting he'd survived worse gambles. He'd lost everything. Yet there was something in Bill's concern that struck a chord. Was he really equipped to handle the implications of this connection? As the minutes ticked by, Jake wrestled with the possibilities crashing in waves against him. Sam represented a bridge to a part of himself that had long been abandoned. Embracing this child could mean reclaiming that lost essence, but at what risk? Leaving the diner with an unsettled feeling, Jake surveyed his surroundings, the sun setting over the fields, casting long shadows that mirrored his own inner turmoil. With each step back to the ranch, he grappled with what it meant to chance vulnerability after so many years of self-imposed exile from both joy and pain. At home, nestled in the solitude of his familiar surroundings, memories flooded him. His wife dancing in the dusky light, laughter spilling out from their lively evenings. Recollections wedged between nostalgia and grief set a buzz within him. He needed to make room for Sam, yet dared he disrupt the peace that sat too close to the edge of chaos? That night, before Lily curled up beside him, he looked into her expectant eyes and saw all the warmth that had initially melted his barrenness. "You really want to see Sam again?" His voice was softer than intended, more pleading than he had planned. "Yes," she beamed, undeterred by previous uncertainty. "He's fun. He makes me laugh." A small smile flickered on Jake's lips. "Then we will, but it has to be our secret for now, all right?" Weakly, he wondered if this was denial or hope wading into the waters of possibility. He tucked her in, the childish innocence wrapping around him like a blanket he hadn't realized was missing. Before succumbing to the sleep seeping into his bones, Jake pondered his own feelings, questioning the fine line between connection and exposure. Each revelation about himself pushed past old defenses, urging him onward. Tomorrow, things would begin to change. Whatever awaited him in the morning light, he could no longer afford stagnation, for he was standing on the precipice. A decision loomed that could redefine love, loss, and possibility. Could Sam be the key to healing his fractured spirit, or would he just mirror the heartache? What lay in wait? The dawn would soon reveal his choices, and the moment of truth was about to arrive. The morning light crept through the curtains, casting warm gold on the worn wooden floors of Jake's home. He awoke with a sense of anticipation buzzing beneath his skin. Yet the weight of responsibility settled heavily upon him as he remembered the promises made to Lily. The thought of Sam stirred in his mind, a boy he had never known, yet felt tethered to somehow. Could this boy offer him a glimpse of the life he once cherished,
Or would he simply dredge up memories best left buried? Jake moved through the morning routine with a sense of urgency. Each task, from brewing coffee to feeding the livestock, felt more loaded than ever before. He sensed the ghosts of his past hovering just outside, waiting for him to take a step into the unknown. Today was the day, he reminded himself, the day he would act on the decision that had begun to crystallize during the restless night. After preparing Lily's breakfast, he glanced out the window, taking in the sprawling ranch. It was where he had found solace in silence, but today that silence felt distorted. It was a reminder of how stagnant his life had become, how fear had kept him tethered. He had survived in isolation, but now faced the reality that perhaps he had also been hiding from potential joy. "Dad, I can help." Lily's enthusiastic voice cut through his spiraling thoughts. With unrelenting energy, she bounced on her heels, eager to contribute. "All right, champ," Jake replied, the gentleness in his tone surprising him. "Let's get these chores done. We've got something special planned." Lily's eyes sparkled with excitement as they moved through their tasks. With every shared laugh and spontaneous dance break in the barn, Jake felt the barrier he had built around himself start to thaw. The joy the two shared opened something within him, a dormant spirit awakening to play and connection that had long been absent. While his mind remained cautious, a sliver of hope began to bloom. After they wrapped up their work, Jake realized that time had slipped away. The appointment with Sam's guardians loomed ahead, and he needed to confront the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside. In the truck, Jake gripped a steering wheel with newfound resolve, each mile igniting a sense of purpose. He reflected on Bill's warning, the concern settling within him like a heavy stone. It would be reckless to ignore how this encounter could impact both Lily and himself. But what if facing his fears opened new avenues of healing? His thoughts raced as he pulled into the small neighborhood where Sam lived. The modest homes screamed familiarity, and as he parked the truck, an exhilarating mix of dread and curiosity washed over him. Jake realized he was no longer just a father trying to protect his daughter. He was a man daring to step back into a world that had once stripped him of everything. As he approached the front door, knocking lightly, memories flooded back, of laughter and warmth, of lost moments and unlived dreams. The door swung open, and there stood Sam, a mirror of his past, but with all the wonder of a child. Jake was unprepared for the rush of emotions he felt. The mixture of apprehension and undeniable connection surged through him. Sam's wide-eyed gaze hitched a chord within, a reminder of his own lost innocence. The boy wasn't merely a reminder of pain, he was a chance for joy. "Hi, you must be Jake," Sam said, his voice breaking through Jake's swirling thoughts. Jake took a breath, searching for the right words, but all he could manage was a curt nod. The uncertainty knotted his stomach, echoing Bill's warning yet again. Just as Jake considered turning back, Lily's hand slipped into his, solid and reassuring. "I think we're going to be friends," she declared, her light spirit surrounding them like a warm embrace. Jake shifted, feeling the walls he had built begin to crack. Perhaps Sam was more than just a link to pain. Perhaps he was a catalyst for healing, after all. As they stepped inside, the prospect of new beginnings loomed, along with the weight of Jake's choices. What he hadn't realized was that being vulnerable could lead him somewhere unexpected. It could lead him back to self-discovery. But the real test awaited him in the coming moments. Would he allow this young boy to reopen his heart, or cling to the shackles of his past? The door clicked shut behind him, locking him in a world wonderfully unfamiliar, yet charged with potential. A spark ignited inside. Perhaps hope was not merely a distant memory, but a tangible possibility. What would this day reveal? The next chapter of Jake's life was unfolding, with uncertain paths to navigate. What awaited him, however, could be the ultimate revelation he had never anticipated.
Inside the modest home, Jake stood at the threshold of transformation, uncertain yet willing. The scent of cinnamon and sugar wafted from the kitchen, mingling with laughter, wrapping around him like a protective cocoon. Sam's guardians moved effortlessly, their ease reminding Jake of simpler days, days he thought were lost to him forever. "Come in, let's have some cookies," a pleasant voice called from the kitchen. Sam's mother, a woman with caring eyes that glistened with warmth, gestured for them to enter. Jake stepped through the doorway, and with Lily at his side, the familiar weight of apprehension gave way to an unanticipated thrill. As they settled in, he took in the bustling atmosphere, where laughter collided with crumbs scattered across the table. Sam's easy banter filled the air, effortlessly bridging the gap from a stranger to a new friend beside Lily. Jake observed, a mix of admiration and worry swelling within him. Was it foolish to hope? "Dad, can we help bake?" Lily asked, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. "Sure," Jake replied, though hesitation crept into his mind. What if this moment spiraled into an emotional reckoning he wasn't prepared for? "Here, let me show you," Sam grinned, engaging Lily in a spontaneous flower fight. Jake initially felt the urge to intervene, to impose the boundaries he had erected, but another part of him, the part that had ached for connection and warmth, urged him to let go. As the flower danced around the room, Jake softened, allowing a smile to break through his guarded facade. The laughter of children, pure and spontaneous, washed over him, reminding him of his own childhood. There was joy, and perhaps even healing, in these unrefined moments. Lily chimed in with a chuckle that struck a chord deep within Jake, challenging the muted groove of his grief. Could he choose to lean into this joy rather than resist it? Would he find strength in vulnerability rather than fear? "Want to help me mix?" Sam asked, extending a small bowl of ingredients towards Jake. The child's trust struck a chord within him. He could see the expectation in the boy's eyes. It was a reflection of his own desire to be seen, to connect despite the emotional barriers clinging to him. Taking the bowl, Jake hesitated. The act of engaging felt monumental, as if he was being asked to shed layers of armor he had worn for too long. He began to mix, feeling the clandestine potential of empowerment wash over him, a realization that these small interactions were powerful. "This is really great," Sam exclaimed, his smile wide. "Can we make our own special cookies?" "Absolutely," Lily chimed in, enthusiasm written across her face. Jake's heart raced, a chaotic mix of vulnerability and excitement battling for dominance. He took a moment, the bowl in hand, to reflect on what this meant. It was one thing to allow love and joy in the lives of his daughter, but another entirely to step back into the light for himself, to embrace the unknown future. "Okay, what do you want to bake?" he found himself asking, more confidently. He had shifted from mere involvement to genuine participation. The children launched into a piecemeal discussion of numerous ingredients, their voices blending into an excited symphony of youthful ideas. But amid the lightness, Jake felt a twinge of trepidation. The connection he felt to Sam felt not only joyous, but incredibly fraught. It was the desire to embrace this budding friendship while grappling with the reality of his past, the aching memories that still resonated painfully within him. As he opened up to this new possibility, what was left unaddressed in his heart loomed like a shadow. Could he truly navigate this balance? Allowing Sam to fill a space in his life that had been irrevocably altered felt both liberating and terrifying. Suddenly, the laughter was interrupted by a knock at the door. The guardians fell silent, exchanging glances, while Jake frowned. A part of him wanted to run back to his ranch, to safety, but as he looked at Lily, anticipation sparkling in her eyes, he knew that change was ever so close. He wondered what the interruption might bring. Who could it be? A confrontation awaited just beyond the threshold. But this time, fears of the past felt lighter. Whatever lay ahead would not be faced alone. The knock reverberated throughout the cheerful chaos of the kitchen, snapping Jake back to the present. His heart quickened.
He was no longer just an observer. The invisible thread binding him to this household tightened, pulling him towards something he couldn't quite name. "Who is it?" Sam's mother called curiously, her gaze darting toward the door. Jake's throat tightened. This visitor could unravel everything, the moment's joy, the fragile connection he was beginning to form. But as the laughter lingered in the air, he felt his apprehension transform into resolve. He had just taken a step into a brighter future. He wasn't about to let whatever lay on the other side of that door intimidate him. "Let me check," Jake offered, the words spilling from his mouth before he could reconsider. He strode forward, each step toward the door amplifying his sense of responsibility, not just for Lily, but for this emerging camaraderie. As he reached for the doorknob, he wrestled with a flood of questions. Was it a neighbor with news? An old acquaintance from long ago? Scenarios rushed through his mind, tinged with anxiety. But at that moment, standing before the threshold, he realized it didn't matter. Whatever lay outside could provide clarity or chaos, both of which were necessary for growth. He opened the door wide. Standing before him was a tall figure that Jake vaguely recognized. It was Derek, a former friend from high school, now an estranged acquaintance due to the distance that had crept into their lives. The two had connected over their shared love for ranching, but had drifted apart after Jake's life took an uncharted path. Derek's face betrayed a mixture of surprise and concern. "Hey, Jake, it's been a while." The awkwardness of the encounter felt palpable. Jake nodded, his throat dry. "Yeah, it has. Listen, I heard about everything." Derek's eyes shifted momentarily, the admission hanging in the air. "I wanted to see how you were doing." The sincerity in Derek's voice resonated with Jake. The door had widened not just as an entrance, but an opportunity for dialogue, a chance to share his truth. Yet fear wedged itself in his mind. How could he open up about his struggles when he had just begun to take steps forward? "We're doing well," he stammered, motioning towards the kitchen where he could hear Lily and Sam cheering each other on with their baking endeavors. But as the sounds of laughter filled the space, Jake became acutely aware of the gravity of his words. "I've been learning to cope, I guess?" Derek raised an eyebrow. "Learning to cope? That's more than most people can say." He paused, the familiarity tugging at something within Jake. "Maybe I can help. We could have a good talk, or I could just help with whatever you need on the ranch. I know it's been a lot." The offer hung in the air, and Jake's mind raced. Allowing Derek back in felt like a risk, but also an enticing possibility. It would mean leaning into vulnerability, facing the reality of his grief and the struggle to regain control of his life. But here was someone willing to step back into his world, extending a hand when it felt so easy to retreat. "I don't know, Derek," Jake found himself saying, torn between wanting support and fearing what that entailed. "It's complicated." "Everything worth doing is complicated," Derek replied, his unwavering gaze affirming the sincerity behind his words. "But maybe it's time to push past what's comfortable." As the moments passed, Jake felt the weight of Derek's offer. The tension throbbed within him. It was the confrontation he hadn't realized he needed, facing not just the past, but the potential for growth and reconnection. Before he could respond, Lily burst through the doorway, her eyes wide with anticipation, flour dusting her cheeks. "Dad, can we make chocolate chip cookies next?" Jake looked from his daughter to Derek, his heart and mind colliding with possibilities. Here lay the path for emerging from the shadows, an invitation back to life, back to community, back to potential friendship. But accepting it would mean he was ready to move forward, not just for himself, but for Lily too. The moment was charged, and Jake could feel the road ahead splintering into countless unknowns. Could he bridge the distance he had erected between himself and others? "Let's do it," he finally said to Derek, the decision flowing from his heart as much as his head. "Let's talk." As he stepped back into the kitchen, accepting the intoxicating aroma of cookies filling the air, Jake realized he was taking a step not just into the warmth of friendship, but into a realm of self-discovery. He may not yet be ready for all that lay ahead, but for the first time in a long while, he felt the sweet whisper of hope. And as the laughter began anew, a question gnawed at him. In allowing connection back into his life, just what layers of himself might he uncover? Jake returned to the kitchen, the comforting hum of laughter wrapping around him like a familiar blanket. As he settled back in, his heart was still racing from the decision he'd just made. The warmth of Lily's presence, mixed with the sense of responsibility he'd felt toward Derek, signaled that he was indeed on the precipice of something important, though what that entailed remained obscured. "You won't believe what we found in the pantry, Dad," Lily chirped, her excitement lighting up the room. Sam chimed in, brandishing a box of sprinkles like a trophy. Jake's heart swelled at the sound. It reminded him of the simple joys that life once held. "Looks like we're making cookies after all," he teased. As he helped her gather ingredients, his mind darted backward and forward, caught between the innocence of this moment and the complexities of his past. He was slipping back into routine, only now tinged with a sharper awareness of how fragile his happiness had become. As the mixing bowl filled with butter and sugar, Derek's words echoed in his ears. Learning to cope. The phrase resonated deeply. A year ago, coping had felt like a distant concept, clouded beneath a weight he could hardly describe. Now, it was a budding reality. He had taken steps forward, however small, and that felt monumental. But could he really embrace Derek's offer? What kind of vulnerability would allowing someone back into his life require? They used to share laughter and dreams, but the past was littered with misunderstandings. Their lives had diverged starkly. Yet the prospect of digging into those untangling threads intrigued him, perhaps even more than the idea of baking cookies. As Jake poured in the chocolate chips, the desire to maintain control began battling a compulsion to open up, to connect, even if it meant confronting his fears. He looked over at Lily and Sam, both blissfully unaware of his internal struggle. What kind of role model would he be for Lily if he continued to shut others out? Could a fractured relationship with Derek create a new opportunity for healing? "Dad, can you help?" Sam's plaintive voice called him back to the present. She was struggling to reach the cookie sheets. A gentle smile crossed Jake's face as he helped her, his heart momentarily lightening. Perhaps he could show her that asking for help was just as vital as providing it. Once the cookies were oozing with melted chocolate and cooling on the rack, the chatter turned toward plans for the evening. Laughter filled the gaps where silence once lived, a sure sign that life was slowly stitching itself together again. Yet, as the session of baking came to a close, dread washed over him like a wave. The impending conversation with Derek loomed closer than ever. Excusing himself, Jake stepped outside to breathe. The crisp air grounded him, the vastness of the landscape reminding him of the fragility of human connection. With each breath, the potential of the coming evening swelled. Could he accept Derek's help? Would it lead to reconciliation or further pain? It wasn't just his struggle anymore. It was about accepting help for Lily's sake, too. Lost in thought, Jake glanced back towards the light spilling from the kitchen. Making that call to Derek would require a leap of faith, a departure from the familiar shadows he'd clung to for so long. Suddenly, his phone buzzed in his pocket, the insistent vibration an unwelcome interruption. He fished it out, recognizing the number instantly. It was Derek. Heart pounding, he wrestled with the dual urges of retreat and engagement. The future was unfolding before him, tantalizingly out of reach. Would he dare to answer and invite risk back into his life? Or would he let the moment pass, slipping back into isolation? He inhaled deeply, the scent of cookies still lingering in the air. The moment of reckoning was at hand. Should he embrace the leap into connection or retreat back to safety?
With trembling hands, he pressed answer. "Hey," came Derek's voice, a mix of surprise and warmth flooding through the line. That single syllable felt like a door creaking open, inviting him into the cavernous uncertainty Jake had long avoided. "Hey," Jake replied, the word barely a whisper, laden with unspoken questions. "I didn't expect you to pick up. I was just checking in," Derek continued, his tone casual, yet there was an undercurrent of something more. "How are you doing?" The question struck Jake like a jolt. How was he doing? The answer was complicated. A tangled ball of kitchen chaos, earnest attempts at moving forward, and a raw reluctance to unearth old grievances. "I'm okay," he said, the lie rolling off his tongue far easier than he anticipated. "Just okay?" Derek pressed gently, his concern palpable even through the phone. A heavy pause hung in the air, and Jake felt the urge to shield himself behind a wall of indifference rise. Yet he was afraid of what hiding behind that wall had meant in the past: isolation, silence, and growing bitterness. It took a moment, but he summoned the courage to push against that instinct. "Actually, I wanted to talk," he finally admitted, setting himself up for an awkward dive into vulnerability. "About?" Derek prompted, an edge of eagerness in his tone that stirred a mix of hope and anxiety in Jake. "The offer you made earlier," he said, heart racing, "about helping out. I'm considering it." He could almost hear the pause on the other end, the swift air of possibility filling the void. Then Derek spoke, cautiously optimistic. "That's great to hear. I think it could really help." "Help what?" Jake interrupted, suddenly defensive. "What do you think it'll help exactly?" He realized he was stepping onto uneven ground, but the unease surged forth. "Us," Derek replied, voice steady. "Help our relationship. Help you. Talking is an important step, but to truly heal, we can't keep avoiding each other." Jake inhaled sharply. This was it. An invitation to dig into buried truths, to explore the connections they once shared, past and present. The prospect frightened him. With each breath, he wrestled with the burgeoning realization that vulnerability might be the only way forward. What if it only brings up more pain? "Could be," Derek acknowledged bluntly, "but it could also bring understanding. Sometimes we need to face uncomfortable things to truly move on." His words rang true, pressing against Jake's walls like a persistent wind. He thought of Lily, how sheltering her from his past wouldn't serve her any better than clinging to his solitude had served him. With a rush of clarity, Jake understood that his hesitance wasn't just about fear, it was about the possibilities wrapped in connection. Threads of hope began intertwining with his doubts. Taking a steadying breath, he decided to lean into the uncertainty. "Let's meet tomorrow," he said, his voice firmer than it had been in years. "We can talk. I think I'm ready to face some things." "Ready is a good place to be," Derek replied quietly, satisfaction evident in his tone. As Jake hung up, certainty mingled with a sense of trepidation, a bittersweet acknowledgement that he was choosing a path fraught with emotional complexity instead of lurking in comfortable isolation. Wind rustled the nearby trees as if responding to Jake's new resolve. In that moment, he noticed Lily and Sam laughing inside, the warm glow of their joy serving as a beacon amidst his stormy thoughts. He didn't want them to bear the weight of his ghosts. This journey wasn't just about him anymore. It was about shaping a better future for them all. Determinedly stepping toward the kitchen, he embraced the daunting task ahead. But as he reached for the door handle, a familiar pang of doubt resurfaced. What if his decision led to resurfacing scars he thought long healed? That thought slithered around his mind, sending a chill down his spine as he stepped back inside. The laughter of his children was a stark reminder that the stakes had just risen. Tomorrow would arrive with clarity or chaos. With a quiet resolve, he took a deep breath, preparing for whatever revelations awaited him. Would he finally confront the past to forge a brighter tomorrow? Or would old wounds prove too deep to heal?
The morning light filtered through the kitchen window, illuminating the chaos Jake had either chosen or been resigned to. Each breakfast plate held a story, a symphony of cereal spills and hastily cut fruits, remnants echoing the disarray in his mind. Today, however, he felt a spark. The looming confrontation with Derek was punctuating each minute with both dread and an exhilarating promise of change. As he prepared toast, the familiar sounds of laughter from Lily and Sam drew him deeper into reality. Their carefree spirits ignited something within him, a longing not just for accountability, but for reconnection. The mundane ritual of pouring juice brought him back to the notion of nurturing, not just his children, but the relationships that mattered. "Dad!" "Sam!" called from the living room, demanding Jake's attention while he built an imaginary fortress. It seemed small, but at that moment it felt monumental. Another reminder that he was not merely existing. He was molding young lives, constructing their futures, and perhaps it was time to fortify his own emotional foundations. "Coming!" he shouted back, momentarily abandoning the kitchen. As he stepped into the living room, the scene unfolded like a vivid painting, splashes of color against the backdrop of typicality. Sam's concentration was intense as he stacked blocks, while Lily sat cross-legged flipping through a picture book. The image pierced through Jake like a revelation. How could he bring his children the strength they needed without first confronting his own doubts? The flickers of uncertainty flared again, gnawing at his resolve. What kind of father would show up broken? What if his battle with his past only sowed seeds of discord in their innocent lives? But beneath those fears lay a flicker of determination. Vulnerability could very well be the armor that shielded them from his unresolved pain. "Hey guys, what do you think about building a castle today?" he asked, attempting a buoyant tone that masked the fluttering in his stomach. Their eyes sparkled with delight. "Can we decorate it with crayons after?" Lily added, her imagination swirling. "Absolutely! We'll make it the biggest castle ever!" The response flowed from him more easily than anticipated. There was a freedom in that moment, the realization that they could create something together, just as he would need to construct a dialogue with Derek. His children's laughter was not merely background noise. It was a reminder of the love and joy that could replace fear. Later that day, a nervous energy thrummed in Jake's veins as he prepared for the meetup. The clock on the wall ticked with relentless precision, each second amplifying his doubts. He dressed a bit sharper than usual, a conscious shift towards what he hoped was a version of himself that could hold a difficult conversation without faltering. As he straightened his collar, he recognized the duality of this moment, standing at the precipice of the past and the promise of a future. Arriving at the cafe felt surreal, the familiar smell of coffee creeping in with a scent of nostalgia. Once a hub of solace for him, today it morphed into a battleground of emotional confrontation. Taking a deep breath, he stepped through the door, fully aware that what lay ahead would take every ounce of courage he could muster. Every table he passed was a reminder of unguarded moments between friends, of laughter shared over cups of steamy profit and time. When he spotted Derek seated in the corner, the tension in his gut tightened. This was it. The time had come to face what had long been buried. As he approached, Derek looked up, and for a split second, their eyes locked. Fleetingly, Jake envisioned all the unspoken assumptions pooling between them. Regrets, miscommunications, dreams deferred. "Hey, thanks for coming," Derek said, his voice steady, but Jake sensed an undertow of nerves. "Yeah, me too," Jake replied, the words barely punctuating the heavy atmosphere as they settled into the booth. What truths would surface? What barriers would buckle under the weight of honesty? Jake's heart raced with the uncertainty layered in every passing second, even as he steeled himself to commit to this confrontation. Would they emerge with clarity, or become entangled in the chaos of their shared past? The moment was poised, nerves humming, but he felt unyielding conviction ground his resolve. Today, he'd fight for understanding. Would that understanding be enough to reshape their future? The next heartbeat pulsed with anticipation, priming Jake for the cascade of revelations that awaited him. As the late afternoon sun streamed through the cafe window, its golden warmth seemed to cradle the two men in a fragile sense of safety that clashed with the tension vibrating between them. Jake struggled to find the words, while Derek shifted in his seat, a subtle sign of his readiness to delve deeper. "Thanks for coming," Jake started, shaking off an uncharacteristic bout of uncertainty. He took a breath. "I know it's been a long time since we've talked. This past year has been hard." Derek nodded, his calm gaze reassuring. "Life throws curveballs, doesn't it? We mess up, we change, but we can come back from it." The sincerity in Derek's voice began to chip away at the walls Jake had fortified around his heart. Jake found it difficult to meet his eyes, but he pressed on. "You reached out when I didn't expect it. It's hard to let people in after what happened." His voice faltered, the weight of his grief threatening to rise alongside his apprehension. "I get it. You're not the only one who's lost something," Derek replied, a hint of struggle woven into his tone. "But maybe we both need this, some way to reconnect and heal. It's not about the past. It's about understanding our present." Jake's heart raced as he registered the gravity of those words. His past had loomed over him like a storm cloud. It was time to stop letting it dictate his present. "I've had to figure out how to be a father alone, and I don't know how to let anyone back in without fear of losing again," he admitted grimly. Derek leaned in, empathy etched on his face. "You're telling me you don't want Lily to inherit your pain, right? It starts with you stepping out of the shadows. Trust me, I know the darkness. It swallows you whole if you let it." Jake felt the warmth of connection spark around them, the unspoken understanding that held a mirror to both their experiences. "Maybe I've used my grief as a shield," he reflected, considering Derek's words. "But how do I balance that with being responsible, being strong for her?" "Strength doesn't come from hiding away," Derek said, his voice intense yet steady. "And it doesn't mean you're invulnerable. Sometimes admitting you need help is the bravest thing you can do. Letting others in can help both of you. It's time to reclaim that space." Jake felt a shift within him, a shift that didn't erase his losses, but instead illuminated the path ahead. Fueled by a sense of urgency, he searched Derek's eyes. "Will you help me? Not just on the ranch, but to navigate all of this, my guilt, my fears. Can we possibly rebuild?" "Absolutely," Derek smiled, a warmth blossoming between them. "Let's tackle it together. It's never too late to find a way back to connection. But it starts with honesty, between us and with ourselves." Jake soaked in the affirmation. He felt a burgeoning sense of hope as he dove into open conversation. They explored their respective vulnerabilities, shared the burdens of their losses, and began to unravel how the ties of their past miscommunication could weave a stronger bond moving forward. At that moment, in that bustling cafe, the past started to lose its power. No longer shackled by grief, Jake sensed a profound transformation taking hold within him. The heaviness he'd carried for far too long began to lift, replaced by the lightness that came from vulnerability, something he had unknowingly shielded himself from for years. He envisioned a different future for Lily. With Derek's support, he could face the world head-on, arms extended, welcoming newfound friendships while letting the shadows dissipate into the distance. The connection he forged with Derek was not just a lifeline for himself. It became a pathway for Lily too, allowing them both to embrace love and joy without guilt. As their conversation evolved, laughter emerged. Unexpected moments of lightness interrupted the heaviness, hinting at a shared journey ahead. The darkness was still there. It would always be a part of them. Yet, for the first time in a long while, Jake felt equipped to deal with the complexities of life alongside another. Stepping outside the cafe under the brilliant expanse of the Texas sky, Jake realized that the life he had once dreamed of wasn't lost forever. It was patiently waiting for him to reclaim it. He was no longer defined by loss. Rather, he was shaped by resilience. With a solid confidence anchoring him, Jake returned to the ranch, ready to embrace all that lay ahead. No longer would he carry the weight of his burdens alone. The choice to reconnect with his past, to embrace vulnerability, had become his greatest achievement, a testament not only for himself, but for the future of his daughter. Change was afoot, and as he entered their home, the charming chaos of Lily and Sam echoed around him. Each laugh, each happy squeal, filled the spaces that had grown tired with silence, reactivating joys Jake thought he might never reclaim. Taking one look at the two children bonding over a makeshift art project, he understood that tomorrow would hold even more possibilities. He had emerged from the enshrouding fog. He had conquered the grief that clouded his heart. "Tomorrow we'll bake again," he announced joyfully, and the cheers from Lily and Sam filled the air like sweet music. At last, Jake understood that life was not merely about survival. It was about embracing transformation through connection, choosing hope, and allowing love to flow freely. The world outside and the lives intertwined within it awaited him, vibrant as the Texas sun swelling on the horizon, full of promise for the new adventures that awaited. Now is your moment to take action. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you won't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support the content you love. Comment below your reactions and theories about this transformative ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. Show your love for personal overcoming stories by acting with urgency. Embrace the journey together.